here with us in the new Weekly Wednesday webinar. Good afternoon. Thank you so much again for your support. Thank you for being one of our attendees, whether you're a member or you're thinking about becoming a member of the United States Senate Federal Credit Union. We're so excited to have you here with us. My name is Eddie Villanueva. If you know me, it's nice to see you again. And if you don't know, maybe today you will get to know me. I'm the official MC of the weekly Wednesday webinars. I'm part of the marketing team as well, and it's a pleasure to, present this amazing topic to you all. As you know, on Friday, Jarnika, what day it's on Friday? Just remind me. It's May, but it's not any May. It's May what?
May amazing day.
May 29th. That's the reason why we're
May
going.
29,
That's
529.
what we're going over. A guide to 529 plans. We have a lot of surprises for you this afternoon. This is the 3 o'clock edition of the weekly Wednesday webinars, but we're so excited to present to you also. Thank you so much. Make sure you have your questions ready, your comments. You can use the chat feature or the Q&A. And as you already know, if you have attended these webinars, we're going to go through all of these questions live after the presentation. So if you have any concerns or any specific questions that you would like to ask our subject expert matter, please make sure that you got those questions ready. I think I messed that title up, but you got the idea. So thank you so much once again for being here. And I do see some familiar names. So thank you so much. Like we always say that without attendees, it wouldn't be possible. So thank you so much for your support. If you want to share the link with others, please do so. There's a lot of people that would like to learn about the 529 plans. And if you were wondering, yes, we are gonna talk about those plans. All right, they give me 2 minutes as I usually say. So I want to pass it on to our membership development team, Jarnika Trent, with the official introductions. So Ms. Jarnika, please take the mic away from me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eddie. As always, the face of the credit union. This would not be possible without your amazing MC skills. So thank you so much for that. Without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce our amazing panelists today. I cannot start this without recognizing the one and only Carrie Lazar. Thank you so much, Carrie, for putting this amazing presentation together and all of our presentations together. She does an amazing job. Eddie, our MC for the night, as always, usually, thank you. And myself, Jarnika Trent, I am with the membership development team. And at the end, I am going to be the one working a lot of the questions that you may have that's in the chat. Please utilize the chat in our Q&A so we can make sure we answer all of your questions. And without further ado, I want to give a big shout out to Michael for coming in today to make sure that you guys have this 529 plan covered. A lot of people have questions about this, like Eddie said. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be engaging. Use the chat. And without further ado, I'll let you take it away, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Jarnika. Thanks, Carrie. Thanks, Eddie. I'm happy to be here, everybody. Again, this is Michael from Fellows Financial Group. We have been partnered with the credit union for the last 8+ years. It's our only partnership with any institution, and we really did this partnership 8 years ago because we have very like-minded goals for members and clients. We want long-term relationships. We want to be able to give you honest, independent advice and be able to help people meet or exceed their goals. So my contact information is going to be in the presentation at the end. I can always be found on the credit union's website. But today we're going to talk about 529s. And 529s, if you don't know, are education programs to help you really save for schooling. And it used to only be high school, or excuse me, college, and now it can actually be college, high school, and even some elementary school. So, as we mentioned, utilize the Q&A, utilize the webinar chat. We'll definitely make sure we answer all the questions before we sign off today. This is being recorded, so just a little reminder there. And looking forward to going through this information with you today. So today's agenda, we're going to look at 529s, right? Why, education planning is, a paramount topic for financial repercussions and families, and how that, it's significantly been increased over the years. So it's really just not not something that we can just bookmark and forget. We really have to be strategic and tactical in regards to how you handle education planning. We're going to walk through how they work, the tax advantages, some of the flexibility that they offer, some newer planning opportunities that came about over the last year or two. We're going to compare 529s against other savings options, Coverdale, ESAs, custodial accounts, maybe a regular brokerage account, Roth IRAs for you or the child, understanding how different strategies can fit different financial goals, and also what you have accessible to you right now. And then finally, we're going to close with some practical steps that families can consider when looking at building or reviewing an education savings plan. Just like retirement savings plans, you do need to not set it and forget it. Set it and forget it will get you somewhere, but it's not really going to help you really close that gap 100% unless you are reviewing it and understanding where you are and where the cost of education is going. So that's what we got on tap for today. So why are we looking at this wonderful 529? What is it? Well, 529 was um, a number in the IRS code, right? It's chapter 5-29 or 5.29 in the IRS code, and it allows you to get special savings for 529. Why do you need that? Well, if you look at this chart that's on the screen, you can look at there's still a direct correlation between a higher education and the median weekly earnings. Doctorate, professional degree, top them out, masters, bachelors. But if you look at high school to bachelor's, that's about a 50% increase. And that's over a lifetime, which really relates to huge amounts of money, income production, spending over the lifetime. And so, you really want to look at, what is the goal of the child that you're saving for? Understand what's important to them, because not everybody wants a 4-year degree or, an accelerated degree or a doctoral degree. They could be looking at traditional colleges, great. Trade schools, technical institutes are very popular today. You're seeing less and less AI that can fit that. Apprenticeship programs, journeymen, professional certifications, and credential programs all work. And so all of these are important to just kind of understand where your child is looking, because there are some nuances with 529s on whether you can use them or not. Most places you can use them across all the things that we talked about, but it does need to be into some form of education or certificate program at the end. So no matter where you're going, you can see throughout the years that you've gotten more expensive, right? Not you, but the opportunity to get educated has become more expensive. So, public 4-year out of state, 4-year private has increased significantly. And when you look at all together, for a private, you're looking at average about $65,000. Compared that to a public in state is about 30. Something that I work with clients a lot about, and parents, and is talking about, what is your return on your investment? Everybody always looks at that in retirement, but you also got to think about that in regards to education planning and funding. What is your going to return on your investment? Do you want to go to Harvard or MIT to do, become a school administrator or teacher? There's nothing wrong with that, but are you going to get the bang for your buck in regards to the education cost versus what you're going to materially return in a lifetime of salaries? So people have over the years started looking at these undergraduate costs and being like, wow, these are really going up. Am I going to get my return on my investment over those 4 years? Is it going to cost me $240,000? Is it going to cost me $120,000? How long will I be paying these loans back? Is there loan forgiveness? All of this information needs to be taken into account when you're looking at the school and the education that you're pursuing. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what is a 529, right? So I said it's an IRS code, right? It's in, chapter 5-29. But really what it is a tax advantage plan designed for families, grandparents, or anybody who wants a safer education to invest today for future education costs over time. Simple as that. These plans offer tax advantages. You can get state deductions by putting money in potentially. You also get tax deferred growth or tax free growth as long as it's used for a qualified education purpose. So, one of the reasons 529s have become so popular is they really allow families a structured way to prepare for future education expenses while maintaining flexibility. And as goals evolve, that flexibility is needed because rarely does a freshman choose the same thing that they chose as a senior. And rarely does a freshman in college end up with what they started out with in freshman year when they graduate. So, as we're going to move through today's presentation, we're going to cover how they work, what are qualified uses, what are the contribution rules, some tax considerations, and newer flexibility features that recently were implemented over the last few years. So, 529s, like I said in the beginning, they really have become more flexible. You used to only be able to use them for a 4-year traditional college education and degree. Well, now they've been opened up to trade and technical schools, apprenticeship programs, certification programs, and actually through K through 12. So if you're going to maybe a Catholic, undergrad, Catholic school for high school or elementary school, you can use some of your 529 to fund those, which is still a misconception that you hear about today. People only think it's for colleges, but no, it can be for your master's, it can be for your doctorate, it can be for elementary school. So it's a very broad range of educational and career pathways that this 529 can actually help you with. And depending on the program and the eligibility requirements, you should be able to get the access to this money without any tax consequences and tax-free growth. Some 529s actually now most because of the Secure Act 2.0, there's some flexibility in using your 529 to pay off some of your student loan debt, which is something to investigate if you maybe put money away and now want to use it for paying off some of the loans. So this 529 program continues to evolve. And what I would say is important is always keep learning about it. We do this once a year. And we always add the newest and kind of greatest updates to make sure that as a member what is available to you and what's changed and what hasn't. So 529s, there's two plans. Largely, one of them has been minimized, but prepaid tuition, that was the first 529 plan. So state of Virginia, most of us are in Virginia, Maryland, DC, but state of Virginia used to have a prepaid program. You could pay for your 4-year degree, lock in today's tuition, and never have to worry about tuition costs again. Virginia did away with that a number of years ago because they could no longer calculate what the future cost of tuition was. And basically, the universities were losing too much money. So the state stopped it several years ago. But if you do find a school that allows prepaid tuition, basically you lock in today's rates at that participating school. So trade-off, well, you're a little limited in the flexibility, and it's often tied to very specific states or institutions. But you are getting the advantage of you don't have to worry about the market fluctuations. You have a guaranteed cost for that tuition today. So there are, if somebody's dead set on Virginia Tech or University of Maryland, and there was a prepaid, well, that may be the right way to go. Most prepaid tuition plans that are available today are with small public or small private universities, no longer public. The more popular education savings plan for the 529 is a market-based investment account. And so this account allows you to contribute lump sum, monthly, bi-monthly, however you want, but you can invest over time and that money grows tax-free. And as long as you use it for a qualified education expense, that money that you take out is tax-free. So it's pretty powerful in regards to it's like a Roth for your education. But there are no income limits, right? Anybody, no matter your income, can put into a 529. So one important difference on, looking at, a 529 versus some others is you've got the opportunity to grow your money in a pretty um, expedited fashion if this market is doing well. And these plans can be used for tuition, housing, books, supplies, and certain other education related costs, as long as it goes through normally the university's bursar. So we're going to talk more as we go through the presentation on the education savings plans, since they're specifically what most people use today. But the 529 education savings plan is definitely the cream of the crop in regards to the opportunities to save in the most immediate fashion. So what are some of the advantages of a 529? So as we talked about, flexible education uses, high contribution limits. You can put in significant dollars, sometimes up to upwards of 250,000. It sometimes will depend on the state. They can be professionally managed, right? So state of Virginia has a professionally managed option through College America, which is American Funds Capital Group, or you can do Vest 529 in Virginia. Some states have it set up like Virginia, where people want to utilize an advisor for investment knowledge and advice in regards to choosing the investments, figuring out the timing, the risk tolerance, things of that nature in regards to the children and the cost. Others want to do more on your own. They feel comfortable with that. The 529 Vest through the state of Virginia would be the same thing. The nice thing about it, either way, you are the account owner. The child is not. So you have 100% control of the account and you maintain that ownership as long as that account's in place. You also have flexible beneficiary options. So you might have 3 kids. You could have a 529 for each one. You could have a 529 for your first child, and then they go to college, and then you change the beneficiary to your second child. And then to your third child, if you only funded one 529, you're totally able to do that. You're able to make a beneficiary change once per year. So you can't be changing it multiple times per year. But it does give you flexible options for that. And what do you get inside of 529? Well, you've heard me talk about it a few times. Tax-free growth and withdrawals as long as the 529 is used for a qualified expense. That is huge. There's also a state income tax benefit or credit. Some states don't offer anything. Sorry, anybody who's here for Texas, you don't get an offset. Virginia, you do. Maryland, you do. DC, you do. A few other states, you do. The other nice thing about it is 529s, you can contribute them as a gift for tax purposes. So it could be a write-off. Grandparents like doing this a lot. So in 2026, individuals contribute up to the annual gift exclusion amount without triggering any gift taxes. That's a pretty large amount of money nowadays. It's in the 20s. And you also have a 5-year contribution, which lets you front load that. So figure gift exemption, the annual gift tax exclusion amount is right around 20-ish thousand. That'd be over $100,000 that could be lump summed into a 529. And if that were to happen, if somebody was 1 or 2, it's going to grow 17 to 19 years. That money should be doubling at least twice. So you should have, hopefully, if your rule of 72, which is about 7%, should have $400,000 in that account by the time they're looking to graduate, which should hopefully cover any education expense. There's also estate planning benefits in regards to the 529 contributions. It can reduce your taxable estate by using a gift. So it's something to talk through when you're looking at estate planning, or maybe grandparents or cousins. You are looking to do some estate planning and are charitable towards your children or somebody else's children. So with everything that Congress does, these rules are fluid. They change year to year. Almost every year, there's a slight change or tweak in the 529s. Normally, it's beneficial to the participants, but it's not always guaranteed to be that way. One of the latest ones is 529s can be used for certain K through 12 tuition expenses at a private school, apprenticeships, or student loan repayment. Those are the big changes as of recent. So you want to make sure that you stay up to date on what you're able to do. The nice thing also about it is you've got, if you didn't use it and you don't have loans, well, now you've got a Roth option. We'll talk about more of that a little bit later. But as always, before you just kind of decide to open a 529, I recommend, you speak with, a financial advisor, tax advisor, financial professional to better understand how this is going to specifically fit to your situation. So in a 529, there are specific roles that everybody plays. You or whoever's opening the account will be the account owner. There will be a beneficiary. Normally, that's the child. However, the account owner can be named as the beneficiary as well if you're going to school. There's a successor owner. In most states, there is only one owner allowed for a 529. So if you're married, one of the spouses is normally, and then the successor owner is the secondary spouse. There's also authorized individuals who are allowed to see the accounts, make changes, things of that nature. If you engage a financial professional or custodian, they can have a role in choosing the investments, helping do transactions, etc. The 529s can also ultimately be owned by a trust or an entity, which gets into more of the complex financial estate planning, but it can be advantageous for people who want to create legacies utilizing a 529. So always important that you understand the roles and understand the goals, because that will help inform the roles that you need to fill for these 529 plans. So contributions, who can contribute? Well, virtually anybody. So parents, grandparents, friends, relatives, even the beneficiary themselves can contribute to these. Basically making anybody who wants to push money into a 529 for somebody, they can do that. They have a very high lifetime contribution limit. It varies, like I said, by state to state, but normally it's well over $300,000. So there's no annual limit set specifically for 529s. However, there is that gift tax implication that you want to always consider if you're putting large amounts of money and it's not, over the yearly limit. Another change in 2026 that I wanted to highlight is so you can super fund it, right? We kind of touched on that earlier. So that what that means is 5 years of your gift tax exclusion per beneficiary. So you can basically take 5 years and not consider it under a gift. It will not be qualified as a gift, and it's going to be under the gift tax exclusion. And it's not going to trigger any reporting to the IRS if you do 5 years worth at once. So how do you contribute? Well, you can online, automatic recurring deposits, ACH, payroll deductions if offered through your employer. There's a variety of different ways. Most families really will say, well, you know what? If you put something on automatic, your success percentage goes up astronomically. And so that's really the best way that we've seen people be successful, is contribute a few $100s each month into these if possible. Even if you can't contribute a few hundred, 25 a week, $50 a month, something is better than nothing. The other thing is, tap grandparents if they have a charitable inclination, relatives for birthdays, holidays, special occasions. Have them contribute to the 529 versus maybe buying a toy that may or may not be appropriate or useful for the kid. With any of these, tax-related strategies regarding your 529s, it's important to understand the specific state that you're doing a 529 in. It doesn't really matter where your son or daughter or niece, nephew is going to school, but it does matter where that account owner is and where it's opened, as that will help trigger the rules that you have to abide by the state. So if there's any questions, always consult a financial advisor, tax professional regarding your circumstances. But largely, almost anyone can contribute, including the beneficiary themselves. So, what can we use these for? Well, so you've heard me say it a few times, qualified expenses. What are qualified expenses? So, qualified expenses are tuition, mandatory fees at eligible colleges, universities, but they could also include room and board, software, certain internet experience expenses, even going abroad can be used by the 529. Um, as we talked about, 529s can pay for education paths beyond traditional colleges, which is trade schools, vocational, registered apprenticeships, and limited K through 12 tuition. We say limited because there is a tuition limit. I think it's $8,500 per year, is if memory serves me correctly, that can come out of a 529 per year to pay through K through 12 each year. So if you funded a 529 early on in the child's life or super funded it, maybe you're able to do that, K through 12. There are some opportunities for 529s to be paying back student loan payments under current federal rules. Those were just enacted this year. So as always, talk to your tax advisor or really make sure you have a firm understanding of those rules. But you used to be able to, these 529s, you used to only be able to do, you know, qualified four-year college. And now, we're talking about student loan repayments, K through 12, summer abroads, other things. So the 529s keep becoming more and more valuable out there. And you just want to make sure that it's a qualified expense. These definitions can vary on the type of institution and the specific expense. So you always want to view, the IRS's guidelines. If you just Google 529 qualified expense, there is a page on the IRS that will run through all the qualified expenses for that you can use a 529 for. As long as you stay within that realm, you're fine. And all the earnings and the distributions are going to be tax free. So, what about taking distributions? What are some of the rules and what are some of the options? So, timing and record keeping is important. Distributions can generally be paid directly to the institution or sent directly to the beneficiary or being reimbursed to the account owner after the qualified expenses incurred. So, one important thing is if it's not going directly to the educational institution, make sure you're tracking this. You should want to make sure that the withdrawals line up with the expense in the same year, tax year. Keeping receipts, tuition statements, housing records, all the other documentation is important in case you get audited. It's rare, but you don't want to be caught with the IRS saying, "Hey, you took $100,000 out, but tuition's only 40. Where'd the other money go?" Right? You need to be able to support it. So just that's a good just rule of thumb. Always create a documentation folder for distributions and reconciliation. If you don't use it for a qualified education expense, the portion of the withdrawal could be earning, federal taxes. So basically any of the earnings so you put in 100,000, it's 200. You only had 100,000 of qualified expenses and you took out the full 200. Well, the extra 100 is going to be taxed at your federal income tax rates plus a 10% penalty. So it could be pretty severe in regards to the penalty. So you do not want to do that. You can change the beneficiary. Remember, we talked about flexibility in there. You could use it to pay back student loans if there was. You could even use it to fund a Roth, which we'll talk through. But because the withdrawal and tax rules change depending on institutions, situations, you always want to look at the distribution rules that year and consult with somebody if you're unclear. It's important. You do not want to mess up the distributions. So why are 529s? Why isn't there just one 529 plan out there? Well, they're not. there's 50 of them. Most states have their own. Actually, every state does. And why would you open a, you know, Texas 529 versus a Virginia 529 or a Florida 529? Well, it could be depending on where you live, where you used to live. The other thing is, is there an advantage? Some states they have quality, they can customize their 529 programs. So other states also they all have different investment sponsors, right? So Virginia has an advisor led, which is College America or 529 Best. Well, what if you don't like either of those fund choices? Well, you could choose the state of Texas because maybe you like their investment lineup more than here. Now, by doing that, you might be foregoing your state tax incentive because you're not using the Virginia one if you're going into Texas for that. Now, can the Texas and Virginia be used the same way, grow the same way, otherwise minus different investments and ultimately fund education? The answer is yes. But you might have different investment options or the fee structure or some states don't have an advisor-led program, and you want an advisor-led program. So it really depends. There are good states, there are less favorable states in regards to how they've developed their 529s, what the cost is, what the ease of use of using it is. So it's important to always just look at that. I would always look at your home state, but maybe look at one or two other states depending on your case. Virginia has a great program. It's one of the better programs out there. And there's a state tax advantage for opening up a 5291. So again, ultimately, it depends on the family's individual goals, state taxes, investment preferences, overall institution. That will help craft your state that you want to be in. But always, be careful, review the plan and review the fees and, speak with trusted professionals to help you better understand which option could be more compelling for you. So we talked a little bit about out-of-state plans, right? So why did we do that? We talked about investment options, fee structure, state tax benefits. We talked through that. You may or may not get them. Normally, when you're not doing your in-state 529, you forego any state income tax benefit. There is no residency requirement. So you can choose any 529 you want, and you can use the funds anywhere. So certain states have unique plan features that you may or may not take advantage of. So that's why somebody might want a 529 out of state. But most of the times there needs to be a compelling reason to not do your in-state one. The biggest one that I've seen is fee structure and investment options. So how do we maximize a 529? Really, it comes down to consistency and planning ahead to take advantage of all the features available to you. So one of the most effective strategies, as I said, even if you can't put in a lot of money, put in something. Start early. The families that begin saving earlier have more time on their side. It grows faster over time, compound interest. It's probably one of the most powerful things that we have. Compound interest is significant. And, again, you ever heard the old adage, a penny a day doubled, 1 penny, 2 pennies, 4 pennies, compound interest. It is significantly one of the greatest ways to help increase your savings. Consistent contributions, monthly, weekly, make sure, set it up to be automatic. Hey, I always get paid every 2 weeks. Set up a contribution every 2 weeks. I get paid monthly. Do it that way. I get paid weekly. Do it that way. You've got flexibility. Almost every institution will help you set up an ACH, which is a direct deposit into a 529. And you can look at your employer. Sometimes there's contributions or matching contribution benefits in 529s for college education. You can get gifts from families and friends, as we talked about. Grandparents are big ones that like to give to 529s, but sometimes an aunt or an uncle might have not children themselves and they want to help fund or birthday presents. They go into a 529 versus buying a toy. You want to be comfortable with your timeline in regards to, is the investment timed correctly for when your child is going to start, the needing the funds? That might be in high school, that might be in college, that might be a doctorate, don't know. But you want to make sure the risk tolerance and the timing of those funds, because a lot of them are target date, is in sync with what your goals are. And you always don't want to, just because your child is about to start college as a freshman, you don't need to stop contributing. Contribute to those 4 years if you can. It will still make a significant difference into the accumulation of the total 529. As always, you got to make sure this aligns with your goals, timeline, comfort level. But I would recommend starting early and starting with something are the two keys. And the third one, if I were going to layer it on, is just consistency, making sure that it happens. And you will find that you've developed quite a nest egg for maximizing your 529. So we've talked about some extra flexibility and student loan. So student loans was added in to the recently for the ability for excess funds in a 529 that wasn't used for college tuition or qualified education expense to be paid up to a certain dollar amount per year. Um, that's not carte blanche. Hey, I have 50,000. I'm at 50,000 in student loans. I'm going to pay it all off. You can't do that. There are limits and restrictions per year that you want to do. So you always want to look into that. And that has been changing ever since that came out. As I talked about, 529s used to only be for college, a 4-year traditional education. Now it can be K through 12, apprenticeships, etc. So you always want to make sure that you've got the right use for these funds in regards to being a qualified expense. But it used to be very limited, and now it's more flexible than ever. And one of those additional improvements has been a FAFSA change. So FAFSA is the federal student loan application. Every college person needs to do it if they're looking for any financial aid. And so you used to get penalized by having grandparents that own 529s, and that no longer hurts individuals. So it could be advantageous that the grandparents hold the 529s for your children, whereas you don't. Now, what are you foregoing? Well, maybe the state tax, deduction that you were afforded, but it might be more advantageous for you to make yourself more flexible um, in regards to getting financial aid. And then recently, the Secure Act 2.0 released a limited Roth IRA rollover opportunity for unused 529s. So we're going to talk about that in a little more detail next. But there is continued to be enhanced in flexibility. And what I would say about that is I only expect that to continue over the years. And this is on the gains long term. So let's talk about the 529 rollovers. So there's a 15-year requirement. What does that mean? The 529 has to be in place for at least 15 years. So if you started early, like we had talked about, you're able to roll over a certain amount of unused funds into the IRA to the beneficiary, not yours, into the beneficiaries who is labeled on the 529. So this allows a little more extra flexibility and long-term planning, but you got to know the rules. So 15 years and contributions within the previous 5 years are typically not eligible. So you might have to wait. If you made a lot of those contributions within the last 5 years, you might have to wait. Annual Roth IRA contributions limits still apply. So right now it's roughly, $7,500, 7,000, excuse me, and you could do 35,000. So it's going to take you 5 years to get to that lifetime rollover limit of 35,000. So it'd be 7,000 per year. Now, the IRA limits might go up, so it might, the lifetime rollover limit might go up with that. Don't know, but the Roth IRA contribution limit is really an amazing feature to take unused funds and really benefit the child in the Roth arena. It will give them a significant leg up over time. Now, this option's not going to help every family, but it does help reduce concern about overfunding of 529. That was a big concern and a knock against people, was the lack of flexibility. And then what are we doing with the overfunding, right? You used to just have to give it to another sibling, give it to a nephew, but it was a give. You're going to get paid back for it. Well, now you're able to use some of those, unused funds and help your beneficiary in a Roth manner that will have significant long-term benefits. So some key considerations. In a 529, the investment benefit is not guaranteed. The investment return is not guaranteed. Tax laws have changed. As we've talked about, I've talked about loan repayments, new feature, K through 12, relatively new feature, Roth, funding, new feature, right? Tax laws and plans change all the time. And so make sure you stay up to date on those changes. But what I would say, no matter what, is the earlier you start, the more consistent you are, equals more flexibility you're going to have in life. Non-qualified withdrawals are going to result in penalties and taxes. Don't do it. Make sure you're taking the money out for the right reason. And education planning overall should be reviewed in conjunction with your overall financial goals, retirement planning, timeliness, family circumstances, because everything changes all the time. It's not a current stable state. Very rarely, what you thought was going to happen when your child was born happens, when they're 19, 18, ready to go to college. So reviewing this information, especially every year as you get close, is very important. In the beginning, maybe less often, just kind of be consistent and diligent about making those right investments and making sure the contributions are in there on a regular basis. So what if you didn't want to do a 529? What are some other options and strategies? Depending on the goals, flexibility, financial situation, you could do other things. One is a Coverdell ESA, Educational Savings Account. So we're going to look at that first. So you can get tax advantage growth, K through 12 uses, and there's contribution limits. So ESAs are just savings accounts, really. They're not investment accounts. And the Coverdell ESA allows families to save for qualified education purposes, including K through 12 and higher education. It allows you to, select from CDs, savings accounts, etc. But they're more limited to 529s when it comes to contribution limits and eligibility requirements, which is why they're kind of used as a supplemental to a 529 or a primary savings vehicle. So what are some considerations that you have to think about? Well, there's income limits, there's age restrictions, distribution deadlines, and transfers. So annual contributions apply, income restrictions for those who contribute. In most cases, contributions must stop at 18, whereas a 529, it can keep going no matter what. ESAs also have age-related distribution rules. So at 30, they must be fully dispersed. Otherwise, they get taxed and penalized. If an education plan changes or unused funds, they can be transferred to an eligible family member helping out. That maintains some flexibility, but again, doesn't give you ultimate flexibility with other means. And with anything, the IRS guidelines change a lot with these things. So you want to always consult a professional in regards to an education savings account. Well, what about custodial accounts, right? So custodial accounts are a real option, potential for long-term growth. You might hear them as UGMAs or UTMAs, UTMAs, when looking for a child's future. They're managed and opened by an adult custodian, and the minor is a beneficiary. However, once the child reaches what's called the age of majority, which in most states is 18, but in some states it's different, the account automatically gets changed over to them and they have full control of those funds. Do they have to use the funds for education? No, they can use those funds any way they want. One advantage of the custodial account is the flexibility. The funds aren't limited to education expenses. They can be used for a variety of things, anything for that child's benefit. You can be invested in the market. You can get contributions from parents, grandparents, relatives, others. However, unlike education savings accounts, custodial accounts don't offer the same tax advantages of 529s, and the investment earnings are subject to tax. So you always want to understand that, what you're putting in here could be controlled ultimately by the beneficiary if the funds weren't used ahead of time. And they're legally theirs at the age of majority and can be used at their discretion. So with any savings or investment strategy, you should carefully consider kind of the goals of what you want to accomplish for the child or for this account, tax implication, long-term planning needs before, just blindly going into a custodial account. Because you have control up to 18 or the age of majority in most cases, but after that, it is their money. And there's a lot of people who save a long time, want to continue the control mechanism to make sure that the money's being used in the most advantageous way. So Roth IRAs, we talked about that a little bit in regards to unused 529s, but why would somebody just look at a Roth IRA as a college saving strategy? Well, the thing is, you could do it with after-tax dollars. So account owners can withdraw their original contributions at any time. So if you were 30 and you had a child and, you were eligible to fund a Roth IRA and you put in over the 20 years, $100,000, we'll say. Well, that'd be a little high. 800. Oh, yeah. It would be 160,000 actually. That money could be taken out and all the gains could stay in your Roth. And you'd be able to use that money tax-free. And then all the gains would stay in your Roth and you would have no tax penalties. So some people like that strategy because you may or may not need the money and you'd rather have it in your possession versus the child's possession, or ultimately have them be the beneficiary where you're the beneficiary. So sometimes people like Roth IRAs that are designed primarily, obviously, for retirement savings, but you could use them for, paying for education or any other expenses. The money's put in after tax, and so as long as you take the initial contributions that were after tax, you can take them out without any impact. So normally in 2026, the limit's 7,500 across IRAs. Catch-up provision, you can go a little higher. But you always want to look at it, and you always want to consider what are your long-term goals and what are your constraint on resources. I always tell parents, you can get a loan for college, you cannot get a loan for retirement. So that's where some people will lean to funding a Roth IRA and maybe taking the funds there and keeping the earnings in there as a better solution than doing a 529. Another option would just be a taxable brokerage account. We do that on occasion. You get ultimate flexibility in regards to doing this. No income restrictions, contribution limits. You're the account owner. But there's no tax savings benefits on any of these accounts. The investment earnings, the dividends, everything, tax, long-term gains, short-term gains. You've got income based off of the account. It's just like a regular investment account, but it can grow and you've got the ultimate flexibility. So if you're not sure about the education path your child may take, some people opt for this because maybe they get a scholarship and they didn't need the 529, and then they can use this money for a wonderful, down payment on a house or something else later in life. So some people like a 529, some people like a brokerage account. It really depends on the flexibility and how much you cherish that level of flexibility. Withdrawals aren't limited to education expenses, so you've got a broad range of being able to use the money. But again, there's no tax advantages. 529, if it's significant, if it's done right and maximized early, offers significant tax advantages. So There's also insurance strategies. So some people, make too much money, can't do a Roth, but will utilize insurance. So insurance doesn't have income limits. It doesn't have contribution limits. You can build up a cash value bucket that your child can utilize later in life. You can utilize, you're the owner, and you can access the money potentially tax free or tax deferred. So you can access it throughout the life as a lump sum. You can access it on a monthly basis or an annual basis. The tax treatment is really going to depend on the policy structure and how you're utilizing those withdrawals from the policy over the years. But it also gives you something where you can't get in the other options that we've talked about, right? So there's insurance on that person's life. Now, we're not trying to get rich on anybody's life. However, sometimes kids do not become uninsurable throughout life because they developed an illness, a condition, asthma, something worse. And this could be the only life insurance that they possibly have. And they can have a long, fruitful life in front of them, but they just can't get life insurance. And sometimes you're limited in how much you can get through work and you need more because you know, have a family of five and, three kids and, you need to protect those that are most important and you're uninsurable. Well, if you get this young, you've got insurability and lifetime insurability through these policies. So this is something to be considered. You always want to think about, what are your goals? What the flexibility do you want? What type of tax benefits do you want? And it could be a multi-pronged approach. You could do some money into a 529. You could do a Roth. You could do a specific insurance policy. It really depends on your ultimate financial situation, how you want to fund these, and over what time period are we looking at. All of those things play into what is going to be ultimately the best solution for you. But in regards to just here's a little chart on education saving strategies in regards to tax exempt growth, owner income limits, contribution limits, parental information with financial aid, things of that nature. So you can see there's advantages and disadvantages of each one when you're comparing these saving strategies across these four different columns of testing. So you always want to look at what combination of strategies, because it's rarely a single strategy that will work. And in my experience, most families will choose one or two strategies to create and maintain the most flexibility for themselves, and also their children who are the beneficiaries of these. So what if the change is planned? Well, we just talked about flexibility and different options for that. You can always change the 529 beneficiary. Like I said, you can change that once a year. You can look at if they got a full ride from a scholarship, athletic, educational, they could put up to 35,000 into a qualified rollover. After that rollover, you could look at maybe changing the beneficiary to somebody else. You can open other accounts, brokerage accounts, custodials, right? They all provide flexibility and not strictly limited to education expenses. And you always want to look at, the withdrawal options in any option that you look at. What are the tax implications taking it early versus late? Is there advantages to putting in money in my own state versus not? What are the trade-offs? Those are all important things to consider, because it's not what if education plans change, they will change. It's just how will they change? And one of the last things that we will talk to parents about is, getting an education line of credit, and so you can do that through the United States Senate Federal Credit Union. You can get it for undergraduate and graduate programs. There's no origination or prepayment penalties. Could commit, competitive rates through obviously a financial institution that's trusted by all of you who are here today. So it's really important to fully look at all of your options to make the best decision. As always, I would always recommend reach out to me. I'm definitely here as a resource. Look at everything else that is available to you to choose the right 2, 3 options that is going to help your family prepare for the education cost. because it is a significant cost. And it's really important to um, plan when you have a lot of time on your side versus, shoot, they're going to school next year. So just to kind of wrap up, start early, save consistently, compare your options, look at the goals, look at the strategies that you want to do. You really want to look at, what is state costs today? Where do we think it will be 10, 15 years from now? And then I would highly recommend, if you don't have a plan, like a retirement plan, a family plan in regards to that takes into consideration education funding, what you're doing today through your employer and outside savings, I would really recommend reaching out to, myself at Fellows or your financial professional that you're engaged with to really get solid advice on how this will impact and alter your retirement planning and ultimately your overall family's financial outlook. Because are your children going to start with a large amount of student loans? Are they going to start debt free? Are they going to have a combination? How are they going to be invested in regards to, hey, we're going to make the most out of this college education? Because you got to remember that this is just not education. You got to look at this as an investment, and what is my return on my investment for this education? So really happy with the opportunity and the flexibility that has been brought and increased with all of these plans out there. But if there's any additional questions, please type it in the Q&A. I know we've got a poll or two that are out there. Carrie is going to be running those, who was introduced in the beginning. Please take a look at which topics you'd be look at and interested in the most going forward. We would love to get your feedback on that. And then that's it for me. I'll hand it back to Jarnika and Carrie and Eddie. My information's up on the screen. I really appreciated your time, and I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was amazing. I feel like I've learned a lot. I hope a lot of you on the call were able to learn a lot. Before we move on to Q&As, if everyone's able to take the poll that's in the chat on the screen here, it states, which topics would you be most interested in to receive a copy of? So if you haven't already responded to that, please do, if you're interested in receiving anything. That would be very helpful for us. All right, so we're going to move on with questions. So there's a few out there, Michael. I hope you're ready. So the first one that we have here is going to be, what are the limitations and IRS filing requirements when I transfer an I-bond to a 529?
Honestly, I don't know. That's a pretty detailed question. I'm not going to give you a fake answer. We can look into that. I would imagine that has some tax consequences, but I'm not entirely sure. My guess is I am not aware of a provision that allows you to avoid any interest that you made on those I bonds to automatically transfer to a 529 in a tax-free manner. I think your I bonds is a standalone thing, and what you do when they mature and you put it into a 529 counts as a contribution. But we can always look into that more.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Another question was, do employees help enroll into 529s?
Depends on your employer. Most do not. Most 529s need to be set up from an individual basis. Certain employers will have an education benefit. I would recommend you reach out to your HR and see what benefits they have in regards to education funding for you or your children. Because I know, the Senate has something, the House has something, but those aren't necessarily 529 programs, right? Those are, I'll call them stipends for lack of a better term. So always check with your employer. I strongly recommend that.
Okay, awesome. All right, next question. Can one transfer an UTMA to a 529 account?
Yes. Yeah. You would close out the UTMA and start a 529 and transfer the funds. It would count as a, depending on the dollar amount, a super contribution or not. But yes, you could do that, or you could do it over multiple years. Doesn't matter where you fund the 529 from.
Okay, thank you. Next question is going to be, my daughter's college is on the West Coast. Can her transportation costs, such as airline tickets, be reimbursed from her 529?
Unfortunately, the answer is normally no. Um, Getting to and from the educational institution is not a qualified education expense. Maybe if it was a um, summer abroad, that may be covered for the transportation, but I would reference the IRS's rules. But normally, getting to and from does not count.
Okay, thank you. Marilyn Sterling, this is more for Carrie. If we could send a copy out to her, I'm sure Carrie can do that. And also a reminder that this is also going to be on our website. It's going to be it's recorded, so you can always go back and replay. And Eddie, I don't know if Eddie, you have any
There-
questions on the back end there for your.
One more came in. Is a payroll
Oh,
direction deduction that is part of a direct deposit into a 529 considered a pre or post tax? Any contributions made into a 529 are post tax. They're after tax dollars.
You know, Michael is one of those individuals that every time he does a presentation on, I just have a normal conversation. I'm always learning something new, you know. So shout outs to Michael because he's the man with the answers. Best believe that whether it's investments, whether it's 529 plans, he's the man that you want to talk to. So, thank you, Michael, for sharing your knowledge with you. And I do have a couple anonymous questions
Absolutely.
from my end as well. Very interesting questions. As Michael was saying, that one specific question we can always follow up with you and get you the answer that you need. But one of those questions is very specific. So the question goes, my son just graduated high school, and right now he doesn't have set plans to attend school in the fall. But that could change. If we decide to start using his 529 funds, do families typically work directly with the 529 plan or through their financial advisor? And how far in advance should the process usually begin?
Um, so I'll start with the second part of the. You want to start the 529 planning as soon as your child has a social security number is when you're allowed to start.
Michael, that
That's
was
when you.
my question. And
Okay.
sorry. So my son just graduated, and do I contact you to use his 529 plans? And he doesn't know if he's gonna go to school yet.
Yeah.
But so we might not even decide until July. Would I be too late to
Yeah.
use for this year?
No, you can use it whenever, right? So you do not have a time limit. If all of a sudden decides to go to school in July and you incur the cost, right? August when school starts, if it's an advisor-led program, you can call the advisor, or you can actually call in Virginia, you can call Capital Group or American Funds and say, hey, I have a $20,000 qualified expense. I need the money distributed to me. And you'll ask you, do you want it sent to the institution directly or do you want to be reimbursed? And they will do that. Or you can pick up the phone and call the advisor and say, hey, give me my money back. And we'll call American Funds for you and do that.
Okay, now I understand better. Thank you. Then,
Yep.
Eddie, you don't have to worry about my second anonymous question. But thank you, Michael. I'll just call you then. So thank you
Sounds
for all
good.
your help with the plan and the future.
Absolutely.
So much for being anonymous, but we appreciate we appreciate that questions, and thank you so much for the engagement that we receive. We saw some comments, we saw some great questions as well. We always encourage the engagement when it comes to these webinars because one, we want to make sure it's interactive, and number two, you never know who else might have the same question as you. So don't ever, think that your question might be, too little, too small, like we're always interested to hear all. Even, if you think that your question is very basic. So as you can see, you have Michael's information, his link. When you go to ussfcu.org/FAS, you can, click on the link and then you can see Michael's live schedule to set up a one-on-one with him. And we always want to emphasize that, whenever you have a conversation with Michael, it's anonymous. That's between you and Michael. The United States Senate Federal Credit Union will never ask, any questions that go, on those one-on-ones. So just you can have that confidentiality with him to ask any questions that you may want. So thank you so much for that. We appreciate you, Michael, once again for coming in, giving us this amazing presentation. It's always a great, time with you and learning something new each and every time. So thank you so much. And
My
then,
pleasure.
and then Carrie and Jernica, you were, so amazing. Thank you so much, Jernica, for reading the questions. You did great. Carrie, thank you so much for setting up, the logistics behind the scenes. We really, really appreciate it. And I just want to invite, everybody for next week, June 3rd. Can you believe, guys, we're already in June? So, June 3rd, it's, that the sixth, the half of the year, we already here, and we're talking about the path to home ownership, preparing to buy a home. So if you are exploring the market to buy a home, if you're not sure which, type of documentations you may need, the process from beginning to end, we're going to answer all of those questions. So please join us next Wednesday at our regular time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to talk about path to home ownership. I think that's, everybody's dream to get a home. And if you already have a home and you're trying to see how you can get a second home, like, come join us. I'm sure you're going to learn something new and you can see how the market is looking like. So please, we're going to have, a panelist team, the experts, answering all of your questions. So please join us because we appreciate your support. So Jarnika, if you want to bring us home and just thank everybody for supporting us this Wednesday. And once again, thank you so much, Michael.
Yes, thank you, Michael, and thank you to the amazing panelists. And most importantly, thank you to everyone who joined us today on our amazing webinar. We appreciate each and every one of you. So with that being said, we'll see you guys next week. Have a good evening. Bye, you guys.